Welcome, everyone, to Talks with Meah podcast, entertainment edition. This is the only show that breaks down the journey on how to become the next media mogul with weekly interviews from the entertainment industry's biggest game changers. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Jame Jackson in the building. She is an award-winning beauty and fashion journalist. She is the founder of TheBlondeMisfit, and she is ranked top 100 in fashion and beauty creators in the world. Her current title is community manager at LinkedIn, and I know we have so much to talk about. Welcome, Jame.
Hey, girl. Hey, y'all. So excited to be here.
I am too. I'm really excited because today I really want to talk about your transition from being a fashion writer to being an editor to now being like a beauty consultant and really like a big face, for me anyways, when it comes to Black women being in the fashion and beauty industry.
Thank you.
So I love to start the interviews off with this question of how long has the journey been? How many years has it taken for you to get where you are right now?
Ooh. Well, first of all, I love that you start that question off because as much as people love this idea of an overnight success, most overnight successes take 20 years to make. So although it hasn't taken me necessarily that much, I will say that I'm probably looking at about 12, 13 years of like creating content, whether it's been for other publications or it's been for my own. I started when I first went to college and I just needed some money. And I was like, yo, like I can write for these sites. And, you know, I was getting paid a couple of bucks an hour, but I was just really excited to be able to create content for them. And I just kind of learned as I went along. So I've been in the game for 13 years. It's always good to level set that because I'm so blessed that I'm in a position now, I guess, in my career where, you know, young women and men reach out and they're like, I want to be like you. I want to do like this. And like, they're expecting success tomorrow. And I'm like, baby, you know, get ready. Get ready. So yeah, put the time in. The time in perfects the craft. Definitely.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Blonde Misfit because I feel like similar stories in the sense of like you created your own platform and it opened up a lot more opportunities for you. And you could tell me if that's true or not. But for me, an example was starting the real effect. It was one of the ways that I got my job at Condé because I already had my own like portfolio of work. So for you, let's talk about the Blonde Misfit and, you know, why you decided to create it and how has it, what was this always the goal for you when creating the Blonde Misfit?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I had the opportunity to work for, you know, a couple of different websites, some that are, you know, now gone, others that, you know, allowed me to see what print journalism could look like and digital journalism. And as I was getting ready to graduate from Howard, shout out to any of my Bisons out there. Love Howard University so much. And all my HBCUs and all my Black people. Okay. So if you're not an HBCU person, don't worry. I still love you. But as I was getting ready to graduate, I realized that I hadn't had the opportunity to work at like the shiny women's glossy websites, right? Like I don't come from money. And I also don't come from people who can make certain connections for me, right? Like none of my friends worked in journalism. And so I didn't have the girlfriend who could introduce me to the editor at Allure magazine or, you know, a line sister who would let me like camp out on their sofa while I interned in New York and took like a $7 an hour job. So I had clips, but I didn't have the right clips, I felt like, for what I wanted to do, which was talk about fashion and beauty. And so I started the Blonde Misfit as a place to capture bylines for myself. I would literally go on Vogue runway, and when Nicole Phelps would write her show reviews of like the show and stuff, I would put my own flavor on it because naturally, as a Black woman, I see clothes and I see our expression very differently. I would also read all of the publications early in the morning and news that I found relevant. I would add my own spin on it. And I did that because I wanted to show people we can talk about fashion and beauty, but we can talk about what it means culturally, what it means emotionally, what it means for the culture, what it means for Black women to be represented in these spaces. And I wanted people to say like, hey, we can talk about these fun topics, but they can still have meat and potatoes behind them, right? Like you can still be a real journalist in this. And it really was a place where at first, I was creating just so that I could then pitch myself to like the Condé Nast, the Hearsts, the, you know, Merediths of the world. But what ultimately started to happen was I was building a community of other women and men who looked like me, who were just like, oh, wow, here's a girl who, is figuring it out. And like, she's like our Black Carrie Bradshaw, like, and the Black Carrie
Mm-hmm.
Bradshaw in the sense of like, there's so much about Carrie that is so unrealistic, right? Like the that she was
Yes.
making, her life that she was living, all that, like it's cat. It's not real. And I was sort of painting the realities of what it looked like to work in this industry and to get those rejections and whatever else. And so I was able to then use those clips and pitch myself to cover things like Fashion Week. Like, my first couple Fashion Weeks, I pitched myself to people and I was like, hey, I'll be in the standing room, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't even have to have a seat. I don't have to do anything. Like, please just let me in the room and I will write the show reviews. This is how I also was able to attend a lot of business conferences. So I was getting a lot of free game, but the trade-off was, yeah, I'm going to write about you on my publication. And here's the thing. When I would get into these rooms, I would write the review just as good, if not better, than the other people. I remember there was this
Mm-hmm.
one natural hair event, and I'm still very close with the PR person to this day because they were one of the first people to believe in the Blonde Misfit. And she let me come to the event and she followed up with me and she said, I invited people from all these other publications. And I mean, publications that we know very well. And she was like, and they came and they ate the food and they tried the products and then they didn't do anything. And she was
Yeah.
like, one of the few people who actually wrote about us, did a wonderful review and gained traction for us. And, so that's really sort of how it started. TBM was never supposed to be what it is today, at least not by my intention. God obviously had something bigger and better. But it was never supposed to or intended for it to be that. But I certainly have always used that. Like when I've gotten almost any job in media, I have always put the Blonde Misfit down on my application. They have always checked
Mm-hmm.
it out because they always bring it up in my interview. And it actually has really served me well because they can see that I can multitask and I can run a business or a media company all by myself. And that's always an asset. So that's really how TBM got started. And that's really sort of like why it became what it is. And it's just been a really dope journey. Like it's certainly had its highs and lows, but it has always served as a place to be for the Black creator out here. And even as we scale, that's still going to always remain the intention.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. So, would you say that the experience you built with the Blonde Misfit, did it differ any from your like previous roles as like a senior beauty editor at Yahoo or a style and beauty writer at BuzzFeed?
Yeah, it definitely did. So on the benefit of that, right, is that sometimes when you're working for, well, not sometimes, often when you're working for these other companies and especially these big hundred millions, billions of dollars, worth companies, you are
Mm-hmm.
at the mercy of advertisement, right? And so even when
Yes.
you get a very vocal opinion editor or writer, like you have to still be able to put yourself in the identity of what the larger company is. And that's okay, right? Some people, they enjoy that. They enjoy being able to write in the style of Yahoo or InStyle or Allure or whatever. The problem with that, though, is that there are some topics that you may not be able to talk on or articulate because guess what? Your advertiser doesn't want you to talk about those things. So when
Mm-hmm.
you are your own business, you have the licensing to talk about whatever you want to. And there have been relevant topics that I've talked about on the Blonde Misfit. There are things that I've talked about that, like for instance, critiquing certain collections because they've ripped it off Black culture, or
Mm-hmm.
talking about one of our even best performing pieces has continued to be um, signals that your boss is intimidated by you. Like that's
Ooh.
something that you can't necessarily talk about, right? Like because then your boss and your company corporation will be like, oh, well, hold up, what you talking about? You talking about me? But
Mm-hmm.
when you have your own business, like you can stand on business for real. And it's really great because you get to own that voice. Now, obviously, then the difference is when you have your own business, you are every role. Here, I am
Yeah.
a writer, I'm my own editor, I am sometimes my own photographer, my own videographer, my own social media editor. I am my own audience development director. I'm my own fashion beauty director. I am all the things, and right, and like you can outsource to other people, yeah, but like you also have to have money and collateral for that. So whereas you can take certain experiments or leaps when you're working for someone else, you might be a little bit more limited in what you can do. But I do believe that means that you have to be more creative. One of the things that I've been thinking about as TBM is about to turn 10 this year is how do
Oh,
we scale?
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. She is growing up. It's crazy. But one of the things I think about is how do you grow and scale, but you still keep the heart and the meat and the potatoes of what this brand
Mm-hmm.
was for? You know, people didn't come to TBM because it was this overly produced site. You know, that's why I think a lot of people, when they go to the site, they're kind of surprised by some of the accolades I've acquired. But I'm like, that's because people don't come here because they want to see all of this extra. They come here because of the content, and they come here because they know
Mm-hmm.
they're going to get something out of it. So even for me, as I'm thinking about scaling and what's the next version or chapter of this, it's like always have to keep the main thing the main thing. Everything else is complementary to it as you work on it and how you outsource it. But that would really be some of the biggest differences I would see. It's definitely like what you can talk about, how you can talk about it, and then also like scale and opportunity. But I do believe if you put out good quality content, you will naturally scale anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember like your first like big traction moment for the website? Like something that brought in a lot of views or brought in a lot of eyes? Do
Mhm.
you remember that moment?
Yeah, it was definitely that piece, the how to tell if your boss is intimidated by you. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting because I actually got in trouble at work for that because I was working as a freelancer. And the manager I had at the time wasn't competent. I will give her that. But she naturally thought that the piece was about her and it was not. And so it was one of those things where, yes, it created a lot of tension. And they were like, well, take the post down. And I was like, you can't tell me what to do outside of this, especially if you can't, confirm that this is about you. And as much as that post kind of created a challenge for me in that role, in that moment, um, it actually was one of the first pieces to get a lot of scale. I don't know why, because again, this was a piece that I wrote so many years ago. It is not SEO optimized. It didn't have those buzzwords. It didn't have all the things that today, by my standards, I would be like, oh God, this post is terrible. Jame, go fix it. And the reason why I've never fixed it is because I don't want to tamper with what's magic. Every month,
Mm-hmm.
sure enough, it is still, even to this day, I think I wrote that post in 2016. Even to this day, every month when I pull my audience, like the numbers and the content that's best performing, that post is always on there. And I think it's because it's a universal truth, right? Like we all
Yeah.
we all have probably been in different capacities where we felt a little bit of hateration coming from our manager. Being a hater has no age limit, and it also doesn't have any type of totem pole. People above you could look down and hate on you. People below you could
Mm-hmm.
look up and hate. So it was one of those pieces that kind of informed me, one, that the audience will really favor and desire real content when you just keep it a stack and like you really talk to them. But then that was also one of the first indicators for me that, hey, like we're talking about fashion and beauty, but we also can open this up to a lot. And that's why to this day, there's more lifestyle content, more career development content, more content
Mm-hmm.
that can be serviceable to people. And it's not just the stereotypical like 10 red lipsticks, for
Yeah,
brown
yeah.
skin. There's a place for that. And there's a great place for that type of content. But I want the content to be for the James of the world, for the next Jame who's coming up and didn't have a mentor, didn't have anyone in New York that she knew. What information can she learn, from reading my content and get out there and crush it?
Yeah. Would you say that that is probably one of the pieces of advice you would give for someone that is trying to create a fashion blog is like the piece about authenticity and also relatability and um, writing about stories that actually relate to you as an editor in chief? Like, what would you say would be some of
Mhm.
the top pieces of advice you would give someone like that?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Authenticity will always trump, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
frills and whatnot. And it's hard, right? Because sometimes it takes, I remember the days when like I would pull my Google analytics. And I think, child, at one point, Google just didn't want to talk to me because she was like, you are getting so little traction on this site. I'm not even going to give you no numbers. And then all of a sudden, when she started to be kind to me, I would see like, oh, it got 5-page views a month. And I knew 3 of them were from me and 2 were from my mama. So I was like, okay. And what I would say is the Bible talks a lot about don't detest small beginnings. And there's a reason for
Mm-hmm.
that. You are perfecting the craft at any stage that you are in right now, because there will come a day where it will be bigger and it will be more massive and more eyes will be on it and whatever else. Don't sell yourself short because you are starting small and whatever else. And also, I have a big, as someone who worked at BuzzFeed, I have a problem with virality. A lot of people want to go viral. And if you really dig into that why, the reason why is because they're like, well, because then my following will grow up and then I can get this and I can get that. But very few people have the ability to sustain it. It's the same thing as how nowadays, one could argue, well, as soon as I get 1 million TikTok followers, I'm going to be paid out here. You know how many people have TikToks over 1 million followers and ain't making no money? They have not built the structure and the foundation for there to be a business. There is a difference between being a creator and being a business person. It's the same thing as there's a difference between being a blogger and a journalist. Like, there are differences. And so instead of focusing on trying to go viral and getting all the millions of eyes, pray for the right eyes to see your content. Pray for the right people to want to engage. Pray for your growth to be trajectored over like a period of time, like to see the incremental growth, because at the end of the day, you can be given all this tomorrow, but can you sustain it? Can you sustain it? And are you really ready for what comes with that? A lot of people want the big lights. Everyone wants the big shots. Everyone wants to be on the red carpet or to get the awards and stuff. But do you realize what comes with that responsibility? So that's one of the pieces of advice I would give. Being authentic and transparent is going to be another one. My authenticity to my voice, whether let me take a step back. One of the biggest compliments I ever receive is when someone reads something I wrote and they say, oh, we knew that we heard it in your voice, right? Like, people who get to talk to me and then when they read my content, they're like, like, I can see it, right? And the beauty is that if you are you will be you in every room that you step in, but the rooms are indicative of you, not the vice, not the opposite. What do I mean by that? I have written content for trade publications like The Business of Fashion, right? Which require a little bit more corporate buttoning up, because that is a publication where trade people or people who are in the industry, like on the more technical business side, are reading. So you have to deliver that content differently than you would deliver it for something like a Madame Noir or an Ebony or Allure, Teen Vogue, etc. But the reality is my voice carries the same throughout. It may vary a little bit, the same way as how if I was talking to my mother, it's going to be different than how I talk to my husband. Exactly. But at the end of the day, it's still me. And the opportunity comes because people want me, not because they want the publication that I'm attached to. So learn your voice early. Be proud of that voice. Cultivate that voice. Obviously, tailor it according to whatever the medium is that you need it to, but don't lose that voice. Because as you grow up through the ranks, everybody starts to look the same. Everybody dressed the same. Everybody want to talk the same. Everyone wants to suggest the same products and talk about the same this and talk about the same that. What makes you different is your voice. And your voice is what people are going to be attracted to. And then they're going to be like, okay, cool. Like, when I have this opportunity, I want to get a Jame, I want to get a Meah, I want to get a whomever else out there, because I know that they're going to put their own flavor and spin on it. So that would be it. And it's a lot harder than I think a lot of people think, because as you continue to grow, you are pressured to assimilate. My tip would be push back and don't.
Girl, you are preaching right now. I feel like you just gave like 10 tips.
I know, right? I be getting on my high horse. I'm like, because it's so true. It is so true. The people that we see nowadays, if you really study the people who are at the top of their industries, right? They are offering something that is unique that no one else is offering. I think about Drewski, right? That boy be cracking me up. Drewski, we all know a Drewski in our life in some way, like a guy who just cracks. But what Drewski is he's an anthropologist. He studies people. He studies the culture. And he makes riffs on that. So the humor is that we can all see exactly what he's talking about, but he does it in such a way that is unique to him. And that's what we tap into. But think about all the people who probably were like, yo, you got to like do comedy like this, or like, you've seen how these people have done comedy in the past, like tailor your message. He would be missing out on his bag. So the same way that we look at other people, and how they are operating in their own, excellence, we have to look at what that looks like for us. And we can't tailor ourselves to what everybody else wants, because then we miss this opportunity to be ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that 100%. Because even in a market that is saturated like fashion and beauty, someone like you, for example, is able to like cut through, even though, again, you said it takes time, it takes being authentic, it takes being realistic, it takes praying for the right opportunities to come. It takes all these other things, but at the end of the day, it takes you being yourself within whatever room that you are in. So I love that advice for sure. So we talked about you as a journalist. We talked about you as a businesswoman. Let's talk a little bit about you as a beauty consultant and how you transition into that role. And what does that actually look like for you being a beauty consultant?
Mm-hmm. So the beauty consultant piece came as a natural progression, right, of being an editor and talking about products. Naturally, being an editor, I'm always testing out products. Brands are always sending me opportunities and things. And so naturally, you sort of cultivate a sense of knowledge, like of the, again, of the business side of things. And one of the things that I always thought about, which is a blessing, is an editor has to understand multiple things. We have to understand what products our audience is going to want, right? So we have to understand some type of our audience, but we also have to make sure that it's something that will be reflective of the business and make the business money. So there's two sides to this. Brands want to know that. Brands want to know, well, what are you guys seeing are the trends? What are you guys thinking that like your audience wants? Like what is the difference between a woman with fine hair versus like a woman with thick textured hair? Like, what are their hair needs, and like, how can we do? So one of the things that I was able to do is by creating the content on The Blonde Misfit, and then also like by working on some of the other publications, like in beauty publications in particular, a lot of brands started to reach out to me and they were like, hey, we would love if like you could just come in and like, talk to our R&D, our research and development teams and figure out some question, like answer some questions. And it could look like a variety of things. For some brands, they have asked me to look at their product descriptions. Like when you pick up the bottle of a beauty product and you're reading like some of that quirky, like personality driven content. They're like, do you think that this resonates? Does this articulate the vision of what this product is? For other companies, I've been brought in and they want to make sure, hey, we are trying to market this to Black women between the ages of 25 and 45. Is this going to resonate with them? And if so, great. How can we amplify this? And if not, like, how do we fix that? So it could be a variety of different things that I've been really blessed by and I enjoy, because at the end of the day, an editor's job is to promote what is already out there on the market. By being a beauty consultant, I get to step in and help the product before it goes to market, before it even goes to development. I can't name the product, but a product recently just hit the market. Maybe I would say like last week, that I remember being in that room for a year and a half ago as they were discussing.
Nice.
And so it's just great to see sort of that pipeline. And I ultimately think more people of color need to be in those rooms, right? We need to be giving feedback to the developers before this happens, because when people see like these horrendous stories in beauty and in fashion, and we're all like, who approved it?
Who was in the room? Yeah, who was in the room?
I guarantee you it wasn't us. Or if we were an intern or a fellow or someone who had no buying power in that room. So the more we can be in those rooms and giving feedback actively to these brands and charging, okay, look, this ain't for free. All right. Yeah. Monetize your knowledge, especially if you have cultivated that knowledge and if you have spent time building that. This is a way for us to help sort of hopefully rectify the playing field. So there's a responsibility on multiple accounts. There's a responsibility for more of us to be on the brand side so that we can invite more of us on the consulting side to come in. There needs to be more of us on the R&D side so we know the right questions to ask. There needs to be more of us on the development side so that we can build the thing. And then there need to be more of us in editor and director level spaces so that we can advocate and push those products out to the market. And the more we continue to get into these spaces, the more diversity, equity, and inclusion are a blueprint for these foundations, the better we become. Because as much as people don't realize this, our products are geared for us, but we also benefit so many other people. There are so many other, like, for instance, there are a lot of white women, we often find like a lot in Jewish culture who have very thick, coarse, oily,
Yes.
textured hair. So guess what? They are going to the shops and they are buying the products that we use for our head. They are using hair oils. They are looking for flat irons that really do what they do. They cannot use some of those products that, are tailored to more, Eurocentric, fine hair. So we will always be good for us, but we also are good for others. And so like, we need to just continue to advocate for that. But that's how the beauty consultancy kind of began. I've been doing it for a number of years. Actually, right before the pandemic is when it started, and it's just been growing and growing. And it's definitely something that, when I sort of look at the pie, the portfolio pie of the Blonde Misfit is something that I definitely want to continue to expand. We actually are opening up a little bit more so that we're also taking in fashion and then also entertainment, because there are a lot of entertainment companies that TBM has had the chance to work with. And they're trying to figure out how do we continue to amplify multicultural storytelling. So there's really great things that are on the horizon. But definitely, anyone, I wouldn't say anyone could be a consultant, but what I will say is if you have a set knowledge or a set skill set, definitely figure out how you can use that to help and inform other people and brands.
Yeah, I really love that, because I talked to Essence Gant like last week, and she's in the beauty space. She's been a beauty editor as well, and we were just talking about her as like an influencer and like her creating her own company as well. And like, what does that work look like for you as someone that's worked in beauty? And she uses her skills as a journalist to do more like copywriting and like producing for some of these brands like Target. And so I just love really talking about how many things you can actually do as a journalist, as a beauty and fashion expert, that aren't just writing for a publication. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And even like the consultancy, I think, is what allowed me to start doing more on-air stuff. I've had the opportunity to work with brands like Olay for a number of years, and like being able to do like what we call satellite media tours is essentially when you guys see people like on like Good Morning America or like the Today Show talking about like 5 products you want for, wonderful hydrated skin for winter and stuff. And usually there's a hero product involved in that. And so, yes, they want people who are good and comfortable on camera, people who can articulate the script and can memorize and stuff. But it also helps a lot when you also know what you're talking about, because we've all seen those people who are just talking and honey, you don't know what hyaluronic acid is. You do not know what you're talking about. But like for me, I can come in and I can work with them on the script. I actually can even command more of a fee because I probably will help write the script tremendously because of my basis and knowledge, and they're trusting me. So it's a trusting relationship. So definitely, like, do not box yourself in. Gone are the days of being like a one-trick pony. You have to figure out how to maximize your skill set and do all the things. And all the things doesn't mean all the things for everybody else. It's all the things that you want to do. You can be a multi-hyphenate and still be in like one specific industry or segment.
Yeah, yeah. So one of our segments is How I Do It segment. So I want to ask you, when it comes to you actually pitching yourself to these beauty and fashion brands, which you talked about a little bit, how does that process look for you when it comes to you actually pitching yourself as either an influencer or a consultant?
Well, I have to say the blessing is a lot of like the biggest clients that I have found me. So I can't speak as much to the pitching process. I've tried doing the pitching process, but it's honestly a little anxiety inducing. I definitely think that in the future, if God willing, if I build a team, I would be able to have someone help me kind of with that portion. But what I will say is when it has come to that, one of the ways, people need to use what they have. There's just too much information out there for us not to find things. Use LinkedIn. search influencer, marketing coordinator for whatever brand. And I'm sure there are going to be a multitude of names that come up, and search through those results. Go through people's posts. People on LinkedIn, on Instagram, usually tag the work that they're doing or the activations. Go to some of your favorite influencers. If they have brand trips or something, more than likely they've tagged the brand, or they might even in their stories have tagged the person of the brand because they're naturally thanking them. And then follow up. Like I think sometimes people just get too lazy and they're expecting someone to give them all the information. But the truth is there's just so much that you can find if you just take the time to just search and look for proper terms, Google, obviously, and pitch yourself. And what I would say for the pitch, because I do have a media kit, is one, have a media kit. Your media kit should tell them everything that they need to know about you: the who, what, where, why, and when, accolades that you have, stats that you can support, brands that you've partnered with. They want to see someone who has done the work. And if you think about it, this is like anything else, right? A job interview. If you're going into a company that is a little bit more corporate, you wouldn't come there in a white tee and, with flip-flops on. You would come dressed the part because you want them to see you in that role. The same thing as if you're going out for a fashion role. Yeah, you might put something a little bit more designer on. You might put some, depending on what, especially if it's like Vogue or something, right? Like you would want.
Yeah, exactly.
So do the same thing for your media kit. Let your media kit tell the story. Send over clips. One thing I always do is I always send over, when I'm pitching, to write for other publications, here are the publications that I've written for, in lead with your best foot forward. And then also, always have the prompt or the story that you want to tell. Editors get hundreds of emails a day. Like literally, when I was still a senior beauty editor, I was getting 500 emails a day. My TBM messages are no different. I get through a lot. So really, if you think about how much time we realistically have in a day to look at a pitch, you're looking at 10 seconds max. So lead with all of the relevant information and make it easy for people. Make them know why you're pitching them, what the relevancy or the timeliness of this is, why now? And then also why you? Why are you uniquely qualified to talk about this story? When I pitched the piece for Business of Fashion, it was why Black beauty editors have to work twice as hard as their white counterparts. This is a conversation we've had in the community for a long period of time. And this idea of invisible labor, and how every industry, it seems, there's this idea that people of color take on this additional laborious work because we have to be able to talk about ourselves, but then also talk to the mainstream. That was something I did not see on their site at all. And I was like, okay, well, here you go. They could say absolutely not, but then they were like, oh, this is amazing. And it created such a flood of questions, and it obviously put me on the radar. But more importantly, it allowed them to see, hey, look, we need more content in this space. Now that brand has a whole beauty business newsletter. They're creating content all the time. I'm not saying that I was the push for that, but what I am saying is sometimes brands don't know what they don't know, and you have to help them by creating the stories that you want to tell, and it may incentivize them to do more later.
Yeah, that's so true. So when it comes to you and your biggest boss move, what would you say for your career so far has been your biggest boss move?
Oh, I'm really going to say moving to New York took a lot of, it was really ballsy. And the older I get, I'm not old at all, guys, please. But the older I get, the more I'm just yo, 23-year-old Jame was bugging. Cause when I moved here, I did not have a job. I didn't have nowhere to live. One of my friends from college, her grandmother was like, you can sleep on my couch. And I was like, cool. I'll do that.
But that's what you have to do sometimes, is really bet on yourself.
Yeah, you have to. And in anything in life, you will come up at a point where you have to bet on yourself. I do believe that the magnitude may not necessarily be as drastic as a significant move. I was moving away from family. I didn't have any family here. And I was like, okay, I had just gotten back with my ex, and I was like, oh, okay. He was like, wait, you're going to leave us? And I was like, I gotta do what I gotta do, honey. I don't know what's going on with you and stuff. He is not my man now. I am happily married to another man though. And so I was, you have to make those bets. You have to do it. And again, study the people who you look up to, study the people who you admire. There's always common themes in their trajectories. And oftentimes one of those is that they came to an impasse and they had to choose themselves. They had to take the bet. They had to bet on themselves. And even if it was difficult at first, it works out. And so I would definitely say that was my biggest boss move, because had I not moved to New York, a couple of things. One, I don't believe that TBM would be what it is, because a lot of that just became about being near the environment and being around events that would pop up in New York, and me just going and being able to have that fluidity to building out that network, of other fashion and beauty people who moved to New York to specifically pursue that. But then also, like, there was something about New York that just made me really gritty. I've always been a very like sweet, kind, somewhat timid person. And New York breaks that. Like, it breaks it out of you really, really quick, especially if you want to grow up, and especially working in media, right? Because media is very, as much as I hate it can still be very cutthroat. And you have to learn, like, you have to build this type of resilience and this type of tough skin in order to be able to do this. And if you really want to do this, then you will develop that. So I would say that moving to New York, as hard as it was, and all the nights that I was like, I don't know if this was worth it, I should just pack up and go back home to DC. I have to admit that it was probably one of the greatest decisions, not just for my career, but for my entire life. Like, it pays off. Now, I'm not saying that to tell people move to New York, all right? Because New York is expensive, y'all. We got enough people as it is. I mean, if you want to move here already, like, come on. But I believe that the vanguards have changed slightly. You don't have to be in a major hub like New York or DC or LA in order to find success anymore. So, start with wherever you're at and bloom where you're planted.
Yes, I love that. So our final segment is, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you just give me your first reactions to it. So the questions are, what do you regret? What do you hope for? And what do you want to manifest and receive?
Ooh.
So for you, what do you regret?
I regret not advocating for myself sooner. This is something that comes with age. And I definitely think since turning 30, I've just been like, oh, nope, advocate for myself. Doesn't serve me, can't have it. Not giving me a soft life. No. They always say youth is wasted on the young. And I agree. Like, if I had the confidence that I have now, back when I was 22, 23, God only knows where I would be. So I would say I regret that. I'm thankful for the lessons, but I wish I just started advocating for myself sooner.
Yeah. And what do you hope for?
I hope that TBM can be an inspiration for others. That all it takes is faith and hard work and a good sense of self and a good spirit for you to be able to manifest the things. Don't allow the doors that are closed, because there's always a window open. So I really hope that that's what it serves for. I hope it continues to be a hub for Black creators and a source of inspiration that you can have it too.
Nice. And last one, what do you want to manifest and receive?
Well, one thing that I've gotten back into is acting. A lot of people don't know, but I've been an actor since the 5th grade, classical piano.
Wow.
The 3rd. Yeah. I gave up acting when I came to college, and I'm not, I don't regret it, because naturally that's where my love of writing came from and allowed me to do what I've been doing for the past decade plus. But I've gotten back into acting, and we've been able to like start auditioning and doing some things. And so I'm manifesting that more opportunities will come, because at the end of the day, there is such a similarity between fashion, beauty, and entertainment. There's a lot of challenges that happen in one industry that are happening across the board, especially for people of color and Black people in particular. So I'm really hoping that as I kind of step into some of these new rooms and get to do some new projects, that TBM can also manifest and be bigger, so that we're not just touching the fashion and beauty consumer, we're touching all people across media and entertainment. And then what's the second half of the question?
Oh, that was it. What do you want to manifest and receive? More opportunities, more acting opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's really it. You know, the community is continuing to build. I'm very blessed. I'm thankful for people like you who have always believed in the vision. And that's another thing. Not everyone will always get it, right? Like not everyone will
Yeah.
always get it and they won't always see. I look at it and compare it a lot to you having glasses, right? Like people can see you have glasses on, but no one can see out of your eyes. No, they don't see what the vision is that you have. So sometimes you will have to walk alone or with limited people. And when they catch up, they catch up. And if they don't, cool. But like your job is not to be everything to everybody. It's to be everything to somebody. So yeah.
Okay. Preacher Jame Jackson
Yeah.
in the building. I appreciate that. I feel like that. I feel like this interview will really speak to a lot of people that are really trying to like navigate this industry. And that's what I really want the podcast to be, is not just like giving the skills, but giving the motivation and the inspiration and the actual blueprint of how I can make this happen for myself. And I feel like you did that. So thank you for that thesis.
Well, look, let me tell you, in that vein though, let me just say your skills will only get you so far. It's the motivation. I tell people all the time because everyone's like, you're so motivated. You're so motivated. I'm not motivated. I'm disciplined. There's a difference.
Oh, yes.
There's a difference. Motivation is like, oh, I want to get up and I want to go to the gym today. Discipline is saying, I don't care that it's 20 degrees outside. I'm getting my butt in the gym. There's a difference. There have been so many days I be coming home. I'm tired. I'm drunk. I want to go to bed. I want to do whatever. And guess what? I'm going to go on and get myself some water and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do the work. And that discipline is going to carry you through those seasons in your life where you're not motivated to do this. And there will be times. There will be times. But also that discipline is what people bank on. They don't bank on the motivation. You could be a motivational speaker. It's great. But there's going to come a day where you don't feel motivated or you don't feel inspired to do what you do anymore. You feel shut down because you got in the 10th rejection letter or this person in the industry been talking behind your back. And now you're like, is this all for me? Stay disciplined. Cultivate that spirit of being disciplined and working that muscle. That is what carries you through. So, I like to just say that because, you can develop all the skills in the world. You can build the best network. But until you're disciplined and you really fixate on that, you can't have everything you want.
Yes. That's been my word for the year as well. Discipline. So I received that.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Jame. And until next time, I always say until next time, love always. So until next time, you guys, we'll talk to you later.
Cool.